Welcome to the Raw Spotlight podcast, where we feature inspiring leaders in the B2B space and share their unique stories. Let's get started with the show.
Hi, today we're diving into a long-term client success story, a B2B manufacturer of specialized industrial equipment based in Irwindale, California, serving customers across the nation and around the world, and how our ongoing partnership continues to drive measurable results year after year for this client. Welcome to the Raw Spotlight, where we explore leadership, entrepreneurship, and digital marketing. I'm Emily Au, co-founder of Ready At Work, joined by my business partner, Victor Huynh. In this series, we share insights on growing a business, the evolution of digital marketing, and key strategies for success. In past episodes, we included conversations on how generative AI and modern SEO are changing the way B2B businesses get discovered online, what it takes to rank in tools like ChatGPT and Gemini, and how to make your business show up where your customers are searching. So get comfortable, settle in, and get ready to be inspired. Before we start, I have a sponsor message. This episode is brought to you by Ready At Work, a website-first digital marketing agency focused on long-term growth. Our proven 7-step website blueprint is the heart of everything we do, designed to build high-performing, lead-generating websites. If you want a full breakdown, check out our episode on the 7-step website blueprint and visit readyatwork.com to learn more. Okay, today I'm joined by my business partner, Victor, and partner and co-founder, Victor Huynh, from our garage startups, from leading Los Angeles top website design companies. Victor has helped businesses grow through branding, digital strategy, and custom websites. Today, this client that we're talking about has been with us for years, and we're still finding new wins and strategies to help them grow. So, Victor, welcome, and let's dive in.
Thank you. Good to see everyone again. Today's going to be a good episode. We're going to go over some very useful information and great details.
Right. Okay. So why don't you give us a little overview of this B2B manufacturer and what makes their business unique, Victor?
Yeah. So this B2B manufacturer is actually quite interesting. They're a company called MeFog, based out of Irwindale. And they've been in business for quite a few decades. And what they manufacture is a technology that allows humidifications. It sounds really simple, but there's a lot of science behind it, right? And the process is patented, where the droplets are so small that they don't, how like you have misters if you go to like amusement parks and you see these misters going on, those giant droplets make everything wet. Well, their droplets are so small that it doesn't do that, and it's used for very high-tech applications, right? From nuclear reactors, cooling nuclear reactors, down to fog. Instead of using chemicals and fog machines, they can create droplets so small that it actually looks like fog. So there's a lot of applications, and that's also one of the challenges with this product as well.
Right.
So what makes it challenging is also because there's so many applications, and very, very high tech, very technical applications, right? From HVAC to even something as technical as a Facebook's server room, right, where they keep very, very sensitive electronics. It needs to be set at a certain humidification level, right? Humidity. So there are so many applications, and a lot of these applications, especially the big projects, have a very, very long sales cycle, right? So typically, even for a long sales cycles, you might think, 6 months, right, to 12 months might be considered long. There sometimes will take years. Mm-hmm. And so that's one of the biggest challenges of how, we kind of came in and worked with them, right, and identified different KPIs for something like this.
Yeah. So how long have we been working with them, and what has the journey looked like?
Yeah. So we started working with them, now it's like 5 years now, in 2020. And that's when, COVID hit. I think there was a lot of challenges, right? when COVID came out, everyone thought, well, it was being transmitted by surface, transfers, like someone would sneeze and touch something and then someone would touch it and transfer it out. And that's our learning of COVID at the time. So the company actually came out with a sprayer because they had this nozzle technology, right? That can cover a really big area to disinfect, like to kind of help with the whole COVID situation. Mm-hmm. So it was small units, obviously not what they typically do, but then that's a product that was new to them, and it's smaller scale, and they wanted some help with that specific product. So that's how we kind of linked up.
Mm-hmm. So what challenges were being faced by the client before we started working with them?
So one of the biggest challenges, and this was pretty common at the time, mm-hmm. right, is that everyone really relied on one channel of marketing, and the biggest one was being trade shows, right? Mm-hmm. So that's one of no one ever thought that the trade shows would get shut down worldwide. Mm-hmm. And so because their entire company marketing and brand presence and their branding was all based on these really expensive and trade shows that were all over the world and locally, mm-hmm. That all got shut down. So there was a big push back to like, okay, so what do we do? How do we get our name out there? How do we let people know that we're surviving this whole situation? And that's where digital came in. So that's also where we picked up a lot of clients during this time in this space.
Right. Yeah. Trade show was a big one for a lot of the B2B space. Okay. So with this client, I know we had to, in the very early stages, identify, the two separate funnels for them. There's the lead gen and there's the e-commerce strategy. Mm-hmm. Could you explain a little bit of why it's so important for us to separate these out?
Yeah. So just so that we're at the understanding the background, the product that I mentioned about the COVID sprayer was a relatively smaller, more retail-ready product, meaning that you can buy it off the shelf, right? Mm-hmm. Compared to their custom products that had to be built, and you had to build it months in advance. And that's something that can be purchased, over the counter, if you will, right? On an e-commerce platform. Previous episode, we talked about like e-commerce, right? WordPress versus Shopify. And so that's something that they could put up online and someone can order and they can ship it out within a really short amount of time, mm-hmm. compared to something with a long sales cycle, right? Where we've identified like people are not just going to come in and spend six figures or $1 million to build out a humidification system for a nuclear reactor or a gas turbine, right? Where we generate electricity. We've identified that product, that sales funnel and that marketing funnel is much, much longer. So you're not really even talking to buyers at that point. You're talking to engineers, right? And engineers want to understand more about your product, want to learn about your technology, and they want to do a comparison. Okay, so what are the different options out there? And what am I shopping it against? And how do I integrate this technology into my project and make it successful? So the first goal is really to get in that circle, to convince the engineers that this is the right product for their project. Once it's in, then it gets built out and it goes into like a build list, if you will, mm-hmm. right? And then maybe depending on the timing of everything, months later or even a year or two later, this gets approved with usually these big budgets, right? Take time to process. Once it gets approved to go forward, then contractors will start bidding on these projects, RFPs process. And they would go down and go, oh, well, I'm looking for, MeFog products. I'm looking for these products. And we want to make sure that we're listed in there. And that's when we start seeing the sales coming in, like the contractor companies, the construction companies start reaching out and go, okay, well, I am bidding on this project and I need cost on everything, mm-hmm. right? And then at that point, then the sale happens. So you can kind of see how long that process is, and you're not talking to the same people.
Mhm.
So identifying that funnel and the different personas and the different people and what drives them is really important. So we have to, it's almost like we're planting a lot of seeds
Right.
and getting our product listed. So branding is really important, and getting us listed into those project spec sheets is really important. And then later on down the road, when it comes down to bid, then we need a bid and we need to be competitive enough. And that's really on the client end, right? They need to be competitive enough where the contractor doesn't go, well, I'm going to find an alternative, right? Typically, in a lot of cases, it's not even possible once you're listed as named. But then sometimes for budget reasons, they might do that. So there's a lot of things to consider along that entire process.
Right. So what you're saying is between the two product lines, there's we identified there's two sales funnel really.
Right.
One that's ready to be purchased. The smaller line, the sales funnel is a lot shorter.
Mm-hmm.
You touched on like awareness, interest, consideration, decision. That's like a lot shorter and truncated in terms of timeline because you can buy it, pretty much
Right.
whenever
Right.
you're ready. And
Right.
that sits on the e-commerce versus the other type of product that they have is the fully custom, which is could be more than 6 months, years, if you will, depending on, what the project entails.
Right. 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 So off the shelf, you're talking to maybe one or two people, right?
Mm.
The long funnel, you're talking to multiple personas and different things, different drivers as well. So
Mhm.
those are much more complicated funnel to kind of navigate.
Right. So in this case, we did an e-commerce for this shorter funnel and
Mm-hmm.
then a lead gen strategy for the longer funnel for
With
this.
multiple touch points and multiple drivers along the way.
Right. Yeah, thanks for explaining that. But let's touch on a little bit about, some of our PPC campaign strategies.
Mm-hmm.
If you can talk about the campaigns and, how we
Yeah.
segmented between the two audiences.
Yeah, same thing. It's kind of related to what we just talked about, right? With PPC, for those of you guys that don't know, it's pay per click, right? Google Ads. If someone goes in and conducts a search, an ad will pop up and you see sponsored when you go to Google, right?
Mm.
So how is that different from the off-the-shelf product versus the custom product? The off-the-shelf is going to be really driven more like product marketing approach, where you identify the specific use case, right? Whether and the mini foggers, if you will, like I didn't really finish that whole story earlier. Is we noticed that COVID wasn't transmitted by surface transfer, so that pain point quickly went away once we discovered more. But what we discovered along the way as we were running these campaigns that were people were looking for ways to distribute organic pesticides, right? And the best application is really a fog instead of a spray, because the droplets being so small, they can actually float upwards and get under the leaves of the crops. So if there's a greenhouse and they missed it, right, with the fogging system, it actually gets into everything and make sure that as they're spraying these organic sprays, they're able to permeate everything and really effectively get rid of these pests or address certain things with the plants, right? So that was a huge opportunity that we discovered along the way since 2020 with them. And so we're able to identify these pain points in agriculture and really drive home the message like, hey, educating them, and then letting them know that, hey, this, if you're ready to purchase, this is where you can order. So it's a more traditional, PPC campaign, if you will, in a sense, versus how do you run PPC for a B2B long funnel product, right? And a lot of people is like, well, I don't sell to end consumers, so it doesn't really apply to me. And that's really common, right? When we talk to clients, it's like, well, why would I run ads? Like, I'm not selling anything on e-commerce. And people have this preconceived notion that unless you're selling e-commerce, you shouldn't be running ads.
Right. A lot of clients says, I don't have a shopping cart. I don't need PPC.
Right. So again, especially even with MeFog, they came to us with that same idea, right? Like, well, they only came to us because they had an e-commerce product. They weren't thinking about, how it can help them. But as we grew and evolved, they realized that, brand mentions is really important.
Right.
keywords that, that are really hard to win on SEO, PPC can really fill in those gaps,
Mm-hmm.
right? So if someone owns a gas turbine plant, and what a gas turbine plant is, it generates electricity, and there's these big, like jet powered turbines, if you will, right? And they generate a lot of electricity. So someone like that owns a GE unit or whatever, right? It's going to be very, very specific. And when that person is searching, you want to make sure that you're showing up there, that they're able to find you,
Mm-hmm.
right? So for very specific keywords or very specific niche, and you can run a whole bunch of different scenarios and hit those. Whereas if you're running SEO, it's really hard to get that specific and granular
Mm-hmm.
to go after those specific people. Because if you can land that deal, that might be like a $10 million deal, right?
Mm-hmm.
Versus what you're spending, it's a drop in the bucket. So being able to really dissect down exactly and reach out to those specific people right when they're ready is
Mm-hmm.
really important when it comes to PPC.
Right. We also developed a website for them, Victor,
Hmm.
right? So
Yes.
from the website development played a huge role. What were
Yeah.
the biggest improvements that was made?
Yeah. So this process went a little bit different from our normal process where we start with a website and we kind of move towards the strategy. We started with strategy here. And I think like a lot of clients, they don't feel like there was anything wrong with their website. We didn't need to fix it, right? But as we started running their marketing and showing them the data, we're like, hey, these things are all working, but what's really holding you back is your website. It's not converting, or people aren't finding what they're looking for, or this client did a really good job writing a lot of technical papers. We call it, PDFs, if you will, with technical research, but it's all living on PDFs, and all the PDFs were going to dead ends. So if someone searched it, yeah, you can find PDFs, if you do Google search, but once they find it, it ends there. There's no additional steps to take,
Mm-hmm.
right? You don't get that data, you don't get that feedback.
Mm-hmm.
So there was a big push to move all those into like HTML pages,
Mm-hmm.
where now someone could, read and understand the technology. If they wanted to download, they could, and we can track that, right? They can download it. But at the same time, we would have a form, we would have other pages go, hey, this is related, scientific, technical information, right? And so everything started to make a lot more sense once we restructured it, from a UI UX, user interface perspective. We were able to make sense of everything, and obviously there was going to be a lot of wins on SEO and these and conversions on PPC as well.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, so you touched on wins. Since this is an ongoing relationship with this client of ours, how do we continue to find new wins for them?
Yeah. So the biggest one is the video to text content. So one of the biggest challenges is always content, especially when it comes to very, very technical products and B2B,
Mm-hmm.
right? Thomas from EFOG, he's a doctor, right? He went to a prestigious school. He's been doing this, before I was born, right? So there's no way that we're gonna be able to write at that same level as him. But then again, he's a busy man. So how do we get that information out of him, right? It's a pain point across the industry, where we have very, very smart people, but they don't have time. They're not writers. They're not going to sit down and write a bunch of stuff for SEO, right?
Mm-hmm.
So what we did was, we literally interviewed him. I sat down with a camera, and we had a crew go out, and we recorded him, and we just asked him questions, and he was able to answer them like in a sitting, right?
Right.
Some very, very good information. We had planned out our keyword strategy. What are some of the things that people want to learn about?
Mm-hmm.
And we just went down and asked very simple questions and let him talk and just recorded that. So how did that apply to what we're doing? We're able to take out that transcript, convert it into text, clean it up a little bit, and we had months worth of now SEO content that we can use, right? So that's a little trick that we were able to get. We were able to sit down with founders or very intelligent technical people and just ask them questions, get it out of them, and then that gives us a lot of ammo to work on our marketing stuff.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Recently, some newer wins, and it is more from across the industry. There are some AI strategies that we're applying as well. Do you want to touch a little bit on that?
Yeah. So, for those of you that are in the industry, right, you're already aware over the last 8 months now, there's been a huge growth on AI traffic, right? That's something we notice across the board across our clients. Most notably for this client, because we had so much technical information out. Not only were we driving a ton of ChatGPT traffic, but they were getting a lot of Perplexity traffic as well, which was not common with non-technical accounts, right? So different platforms tend to have different audience types, just like Google and Bing have different demographics. So we were able to identify that they were actually getting picked up, and that's because of there's a lot of crossover when we do SEO with the way AI is now picking up a lot of the traffic and reputation, right? So kind of leaning into that, we were able to identify the top pages that were driving AI traffic, and we also noticed that the AI traffic was converting a lot higher.
Mm-hmm.
So what I like to be conservative with clients, but there's a lot of been more recent studies about AI traffic, and it's at least at a minimum 4 times more valuable than Google traffic.
Mm-hmm.
Just because if you've used ChatGPT or any other platforms to do searches, right, you know that there's a lot of zero-click situations going on. We call it zero-click, right, where people learned about something and just kind of moved on.
Right.
But for them to get to somewhere where they click this, usually about multiple prompts in, right, and now it might be old information now, but searches on AI are averaging 25 words. Before on Google, we're talking about long tail keywords or 3 to 4 keyword phrases. Mm-hmm. Now people are literally having full on conversations and asking very specific questions, and they're expecting AI to now give them better results. Mm-hmm. Once they get that first response, they usually ask a couple clarifying questions before they click, and usually they've already been fed a lot of information through the AI to already have a preconceived notion, positive or negative, about the brand, usually positive, for them to actually want to click into the website. So that's why we're seeing much more high conversions coming from AI traffic, although the numbers are still very small right now, proportionally. The growth percentage is huge, but the traffic number is still very relatively small, in the hundreds, right? But we're seeing out of those hundreds, the conversion rates are a lot higher than your typical Google traffic.
Right, because they're a lot more valuable. Like if they're actually going to click onto the link from a generative AI search, they're really interested in comparison to regular Google traffic.
All right.
Yeah. You kind of touched on, the results based on, our work with them in the AI space. But let's also touch on some of the key results that we saw after launching some of the campaigns for them.
Yeah. So, we were able to track, actual leads coming in. And what we have set up right now is, the client has a very enterprise level CRM and a lot of information that they feel it's kind of tied into their operations and everything. It's just really messy for us to go in there. So we have a more simplified version where when leads come in, we're able to run it by their lead sales president, and he would then verify if they're real leads or not, and then give us instant feedback, right? These look like real leads. I'm sending it to my team, and we're able to track the conversions that way versus compared to spam or solicitations. We're going to have a little bit of both, right? So we're able to track that and see the growth of those actual leads coming in, right? With the proper tracking. We've also won a lot of brand mentions. Mm-hmm. So because they own the technology, brand mentions is really important, both on SEO and on AI, right? And then also the brand, the leadership, the leadership team also gets a lot of mentions. And that's where we're seeing the big wins, right? The AI traffic and the branding. Keyword wise, we're winning very specific keywords, but these are keywords for specific use cases, like, wet compression, right? It might not make sense to most of us, but people that are looking for it are, these people spend a lot of money. And so to win those low volume but high intent keywords are super, super valuable for this client, right? They win one, they paid for our services 10 times over, maybe 100 times over for each project.
Right. Okay, let's look at, the broader lesson here. What advice would you give other B2B manufacturers looking to improve their digital presence?
Yeah, so especially for B2B manufacturing, right? Keeping track of your branding is really, really important, but also, keep an open mind with new technology, right? Especially with the AI stuff, especially with ads, kind of throw some of your preconceived notions out the window. Advertising can be very powerful, even for B2B, especially for B2B, right? So, the other piece is email marketing, right? So there's a lot of things that, people in the B2B space tend to be a little bit more traditional compared to like tech or SaaS, right? So yes, trade shows are great. They work, but how can I maximize that effort through leveraging different technologies as we move forward, right? With this client, they're already positioned to be number one digitally in their space, right? But again, they're not letting off the gas. They're like, well, they're asking a lot of really good questions. How do I dominate AI so I can continue to be number one in the next decade, right? Because we're seeing that shift from in search, right? So because we're always having those conversations, you want to think ahead. You don't want to be reactive.
For customers that have, or listeners with customers segments and then as well as different product lines, why is it important for them to separate their strategies?
Oh, because your buyers are all different, right? You might be selling one product, but it might be going to farmers. It might be going to aerospace. It might be going to military. And those are all three different use cases, three different personas, right? Are they engineers? Yes. But their pain points are different. Their personalities are different. How they buy, their procurement process. You need to take all that into consideration when building a funnel. And if you just use a one size fits all, will you gain some traction? Yeah, you're hoping, you're throwing spaghetti on the wall, and hoping something sticks. But you need to be more intentional about each of your customers and where it's being used and how you're helping them solve their pain points.
Right. Because you're speaking to different people, so you can't really just use a templated message to all of them.
Correct.
That makes a lot of sense. Okay, so one last question for me, Victor. If you had to sum up the key to this project's ongoing success in one sentence, what would it be?
Continue exploring, right? Because digital landscape marketing is changing at a blazing speed. No one has the right answers. But if you're doing marketing, you want to be open-minded and connect. Sorry, that wasn't one sentence. That was long. Right. Keep an open mind.
Yeah, I agree. And I think this client has been along the years very flexible in terms of trying out new things and very receptive to new technology and listening to some of our new strategies and giving it a try.
Right.
All right, Victor, thank you for walking us through this case study. It's always exciting to see how strategy, creativity, and execution all come together and then over the course of many years. So, and then keeping up with fresh wins and new opportunities for all of our clients. To our listeners, if you're a business looking to elevate your digital presence, whether through SEO, PPC, or website development, visit readyoutwork.com to see how we can help. Victor, if listeners wants to connect, how can they connect?
LinkedIn's the best place. Make sure you mention the show so I don't mark you as spam. You can also reach out on the website. I see the traffic that's coming in, and then I'm active on socials. Those are more casual. If you want to kind of connect there, that's fine as well. You'll be learning more than just work stuff.
Great, thank you. I'm Emily Au, and this is the Raw Spotlight. Thank you for tuning in, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to the Raw Spotlight podcast. We'll see you again next time, and be sure to click subscribe to get future episodes.